Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Humanizing Online Learning. I'm Jill Ballard, Instructional Designer here at USF. We've done this workshop a few times live, but this morning I'm doing a version without participants for the benefit of everyone in a recorded fashion. So before we start, let's think about what community is in a course. Give a few minutes to think about how you would describe community in your traditional face-to-face course. You'd come into a classroom and you would have your students right in front of you. You would be able to read their faces. When you ask that question, how was chapter 5 in your reading before you came into class, you'd be able to see their responses, you'd see their heads shaking, questions could be had. There's a lot of communication that can go on without anything even being said. You can get a read. But what could that community be like in the online learning experience? Granted, everyone has been thrown in the deep end this past week and a half, 2 weeks, and you're having an experience of teaching your course online. You've created some community in some ways. You've reached out to students. You've learned what they need. But I'm sure that you're running into some blocks or some questions about how you can make that community more strong or stronger, how you can support students, and also how you can get more of assessment on what their experience is and how you can help them. In this workshop, we're going to explore some possibilities, some tools for strengthening your community online within your class. So, whys, whats, and hows. First of all, let's talk about what makes a good course. This is my cheat sheet of the elements that need to go into any course to make it solid platform for learning. In this particular workshop, we're going to talk about these two sets that are in blue here, clear instructions and expectations, and also the balance of learning interactions, student to content, student to instructor, and student to student. Let's start off with talking about what social presence is. Social presence refers to the degree to which one perceives the presence of participants in communication. It's a theory that has been taken into online learning very much so in the last 15-20 years, but it has its beginnings much further back, thinking about other communication forms as they've come on to our world, such as radio, television, film, and leading into interactive communications that we have today. Roughly, it is the experience one has working online that you're not alone, that you're there with others, that you're there with your instructor, that there's a connection that's happening psychologically, somewhat as if you were in an actual class. So why is this important to online learning? If you don't have a certain level of social presence built within your online teaching experience, you will not get the kind of learning interactions you want to have with students. You won't get the kind of connectedness, that kind of community experience that helps motivate students to feel like they're connected to others, that they have what they need, that they're not in this alone. And all of that leads to motivation for them taking an active role in their own learning, as well as participating in the learning of their peers. In your face-to-face course, of course, these things happen, this kind of dynamic happens much more organically. In the online course, you're going to need to cultivate it. So let's move into humanizing online learning, branching off from social presence. What does that mean? Michelle Vikansky-Brock, a leader in this field, has this definition. The more you humanize your class, the more students are going to want to feel connected to it and be motivated to log in week after week. They are feeling like their subject matter is there as a coach, as a guide, as a presence, not just a subject matter expert. And all of this ultimately leads to students being able to achieve their learning goals. Here's her model. You can have this model if you'd like. If you notice down here on the right, or maybe your left, is the login to grab her or the link to her materials. But today we're really going to talk about this top portion, facilitation, which is teaching, and an adapted model of this, which also includes the student experience. So starting off with presence, what can you do to create presence and for students to feel that presence not only from you as the instructor, but between them? So key point, don't be a robot, and don't expect your students to be robots either. Set the tone, intentionally welcome students to the class sessions every time. Give time for everyone to share where they are at physically and what's happening in their lives with the current circumstances. This is very important and is probably something you're already doing. The idea here is to keep that going and ask during the course too. It doesn't have to be something that just happens at the beginning. Restructure content to align with what's going on in the pandemic, such as leveraging research methods or discourses of how people are framing the crisis. Again, this may be something you're already doing. The more you can do this, the more relevant it makes the course and the more connection you build with students. This was a suggestion that came about at one of these previous workshops. Bring an object to class and talk about it, concretize. And I thought, you know, that's true. Bring something in that physically you can show and hold versus something you're showing a PowerPoint screen or something as we're doing right now. It really gets their attention and can help them focus on something specific, something real in the midst of this digital experience. Offer additional Zoom meetings for those who need them, such as one-on-one conferences or small group check-ins. This is really important. Having some kind of a one-on-one check-in with students is very helpful to them and you, not only to know what their situation is, to get a read on how they're doing in the course and with course materials, but also, again, to create that connection and humanize the online learning experience as we have it. Continue with presence. Be part of all online discussions, and this is in Canvas or in Zooms. We're talking about both in some ways. Offering short comments to clarify, to extend, support, redirect. So assuming this is an assignment that you have, some sort of a discussion assignment, students are posting their own response to the prompt. Other students may be jumping in as part of their assignment to reply them. You can jump in there too, and all students can read what you've added. You can, just your part in that experience is felt as if you're in the room. And so going back to that idea of social presence, you're building that with these jump-ins. Create an open forum for students to connect casually in Canvas or a student WhatsApp group, for example, and check in daily yourself, whether or not you leave a comment. Curate a buddy system where each student has a buddy with prompts and structures regarding how they'll meet weekly, checking in personally, and in connection to course content. Encourage students to turn on their video when Zooming. Very important. I know some students have different levels of connectivity right now. Some of them don't have Wi-Fi. Others do, but then it's also easy to just sit in bed and put your picture up. Try to get students to turn on their videos so that you can see their faces and they can see your face and each other's. Also, suggest using Zoom chat for those who may not want to speak initially, and this is if it's appropriate depending on the subject of your course. Moving on to empathy, key point, be approachable and approach students too. Make a space for emotional support. Check in with students individually, reiterating this, give extra support through this difficult time. These check-ins don't need to be a big 15-minute conference every week. They can be short ones. They can be a quick email. Anything that you can do that is checking in individually with students is helpful. Consider converting part or whole class to one-on-one consultations before starting online together as a whole to know where students are at. Be very clear and repetitive about your contact information and availability. How do you want students to get in touch with you? What should they expect as far as response time? Is it going to be 24 hours to turn around an email from you? Can they text you at 2 in the morning? Make sure they know that, because as much as you set these parameters, it also invites them to do the connection with you. Provide an etiquette policy. Make sure students know how they need to behave online with each other, with you, in their interactions. It's a stressful time for everyone, and this is even more important now. Harness reflection. Reflection can be used in many different ways. It can be used as a metacognitive approach for students to understand what they've learned by reflecting on what they've learned, what they still need to do. It can give you insight as a formative assessment on where they are and what they don't know and where you may need to adapt your curriculum or your next lesson to accommodate that. But it also encourages students to be more connected to the course and to the assignments, and knowing that you're going to read it as an instructor more connected to you. And finally, awareness, key point, know your students and help them know what they'll need to succeed. So employing low-risk formative assessment at the beginning of class or even during the class will be helpful to you. And this would be such a thing that would be in place of what you would normally do, probably asking students, how was chapter 5? Did you get the key concept at the beginning of class? And seeing heads bob up and down or side to side for no. Or question faces, right? So how are you recreating that in your course? And we have some ideas for that as we go forward. Provide early and continuous feedback. Add in formative assessments to support students to understand what they know and don't know yet. This is, again, thinking about that. The first one here, adding the low-risk formative assessment, might be in the form of a poll or as a quick prompt question. The second point, giving early and continuous feedback, is think about adding other formative assessments, maybe knowledge check quizzes to your Canvas course, or something like that throughout, so that students are getting a read on what you're expecting from them, as well as you getting some insight in what they're doing. I've noted here that you can check out the classroom assessment techniques that are linked in the resources section to come. Some of these can be adapted very easily online. Finally, add more transparency in your teaching. Share with students why you've provided the given content and why they're doing certain activities connected to their goal, such as a final project, exam, or presentation. Certainly you're doing some amount of this already. The more you can create relevance for everything students are doing so that they understand their expectations and how you're stepping it out for them and how you're predicting their needs, will help them feel much more connected to the course. From here, in our live versions of this workshop, we've talked about instructors' experiences and ideas. So we had breakout rooms looking at the idea of what's worked in your course in the past week and sharing those approaches with others. Also thinking about some of the approaches that you've already taken, and in light of this workshop, possibly some of the resources that are to come, what changes might you make, what might you extend, and what you might be able to do better. To be clear, the courses that you are teaching now, traditional courses that have been brought through Zoom online, are not courses that are designed to be online courses. What everyone has done has been Herculean, but they're not courses. If you think about the idea of an online course, those courses are designed and developed to be taught online, anticipating student interactions, anticipating steps for students to take using the online platform integrated through all. In our experience, for most of us, we are taking our traditional courses through Zoom, and we're having to make these adaptations as we go. So anything that you can add to humanize your course at this point and going forward will be welcome and will increase connection with students. So I'll leave you with this idea to contemplate and show you our resource section at the end of this PowerPoint slide deck. Please know that this will also be posted with the recording so that you can have access to these resources. This is myself and Angie Portasio. We are your instructional designers here at USF. Please feel free to reach out to us for a consultation. We are available to everyone. Just a reminder. And here's your resource set. So you'll find a set of resources for social presence, also humanizing the course and techniques and strategies for teaching online, and classroom assessment techniques. In that resource section, you're going to find the link to our USF Teach site. And I've gone ahead and gone down into the site here. You can see the myusf.usfca.edu, USF Teach. I've gone into the assessing area, and we talked a little bit, or I talked a little bit earlier about the idea of these formative assessments and how you can take those and adapt them to the online sphere. Let's take a look at some. So what are formative assessments? Formative assessments are an opportunity for students to get feedback on how they're doing, you to get feedback on how students are doing at a point before a summative assessment or a larger evaluation that will come toward the end. These are very important, and they're usually very low stakes. Some more information in here, and also some possibilities. One of those is the 1-minute paper. I'm sure you can go through these on your own, but I wanted to highlight this one idea. The 1-minute paper is a question or a prompt you give students, and you give them 1 minute to write about it. So you're going into that free writing mode where you're asking students to forget their editing and to think about their content and to just write continuously. That time frame really helps that process move very quickly, and so you get some clear information, and so do they. Again, this is kind of a two-way assessment experience. So for example, what should I use for a 1-minute paper? Let's take a look here. A couple of questions. Maybe you ask students after a lecture that you've had or after a reading or some other kind of interaction with content, what was the most important thing you learned? Or what important question remained unanswered for you? What's your muddiest point? Or what else do you want to say about this? So giving them that 1 minute and having them plug that in, give their thoughts, and turn it into you not only helps them in a reflective way, but also helps you. One of the ways you can do this as a suggestion is to think about using a using an assignment in Canvas and just using text entry. They can type directly in that field and submit. To follow up, I hope I've given you a few new ideas to consider and resources to support them. Again, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Angie, or Mashara in the Instructional Design Group for help strategizing online teaching, for course design and assessment. Thank you.